ella viene de Connecticut y bueno, su organización trabaja para recaudar fondos y destinarlos a la investigación.
Okay. Hello, everybody. And thank you, Yolanda, for the invitation. I live in the US, in Connecticut, but I was born in Italy. My husband is Dutch, so we have very strong roots in Europe. And every time I come to Europe, I feel so at home. I love it here. I also wanted to say that before lunch, there were so many passionate parents asking questions, and that's really wonderful to see. I don't see it very often, frankly, at many meetings that I go to. So I think maybe it's because you can sense that we're making progress, and you have that urgency, which of course all of us do as parents. So Rett syndrome is very personal for me. I have a 20-year-old daughter, Chelsea, who was diagnosed at the age of 2. You see her here with her brothers. I put here a little bit of timeline because I think, there's multiple organizations in the US and you may be confused as to who's doing what, and I thought it might be helpful to just put a little timeline up there. Some of you older parents, or more experienced parents, let's put it that way, I'm one of them, might remember the name Kathy Hunter. She started an organization back in the mid-80s. So that was the first organization. My daughter was born in 96. She was diagnosed in 98. And in 1999, I started the Rett Syndrome Research Foundation, which was an organization focused exclusively on research. In 2007, the original organization and the Rett Syndrome Research Foundation merged to become the International Rett Syndrome Foundation, now going by the name rettsyndrome.org. I wanted to focus exclusively on research, and I left and started the Rett Syndrome Research Trust. So a lot of names, a lot of acronyms, but just to put everything in perspective. So I've been raising money and working closely with the scientific community for 17 years now. The first 8 years with the Rett Syndrome Research Foundation, where we committed $13 million to research, and from 2008 to now with the Rett Syndrome Research Trust, where we've committed $42 million of research. It's a lot of work and a lot of money, but we are making progress. No. And that reminds me, the first woman that, was it Concepcion, who gave the first talk this morning, who mentioned a quote from Mother Teresa, who said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, alone we can't do very much, but together we can do a lot. So that 55 million combined was a lot of parents doing a lot of hard work. So they deserve the applause. So just to give you a little bit of sense of what RSRT, Rett Syndrome Research Trust, does. First of all, we're a small organization. There's 5 people: myself, an administrative assistant, a chief scientific officer, who we hired a year ago, whose expertise is really in clinical trial design, a creative director, and a chief development officer, who's our fundraiser. 5 of us. We all work from our homes. It's a virtual organization. And we focused exclusively on research. Now, I have families up there. We do interact an awful lot with families, of course, but we don't spend any money on family support. Our money goes to research. So on a daily basis or ongoing basis, the people that we're interacting with, of course, are the scientific community, families, clinicians. More and more over the last handful of years, it's industry and also investors. So a lot of connecting the dots and introducing people to each other, a lot of networking. So in March of this year, we announced our 3-year strategic research plan, and we're calling it Roadmap to a Cure. It's a $33 million plan, and it consists of 4 areas: cure, treat, enable, and learn. And I'm going to take you through each one of these. Yolanda said I have about 20 minutes total, so I'll have to do it quickly. Okay, so at the core of the plan is cure. That's really where we're focusing the majority of our effort on. And we're going to be we are pursuing 4 approaches, each of which attacks Rett syndrome at its root, which is MECP2. I mean, we are very lucky in Rett syndrome. We know our gene. We're not like autism or schizophrenia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or muscular dystrophy, yes, MS. So many disorders where there isn't a clear monogenic disorder. We have that. And we know from Adrian Bird's experiment in 2007 that if we restore the levels of the protein, the symptoms go away. So that is a huge advantage that Rett syndrome has that many other disorders don't. And so that's what we want to focus on. We want to focus on MECP2. Oh, I should mention that all of the approaches that target MECP2 will apply to any kind of mutation or deletion. So there was a father earlier who was talking about the hundreds of mutations that are in MECP2 and that complicates things. In some respects, yes, but if you're targeting MECP2 itself, like gene therapy, for example, shouldn't matter that there's hundreds of mutations because you're restoring the gene. Okay, so Yolanda, can you start do both? You can do both. I'm sure. Go back. Yeah, no, one more. Okay. So I'm sure many of you have seen these videos many, many times. This came from Adrian Bird's experiment and Stuart Cobb, who's sitting, raise your hand, Stuart, who was also a co-author on this paper. And this, can you make, did you make them, Yolanda, did you make the videos go? No. Thomas, can you do it? So the videos show the mouse on the left with no MECP2, the mouse on the right with MECP2. And this is the very same mouse with 4 weeks later. And you know, this was a very unexpected experiment. Nobody expected this to work, not even Adrian Bird, who did the experiment. Thank God he did it, though. And it told us that that at least in mice, we don't know in people, but at least in mice, there's no window of opportunity within which you have to act. So you can take a very old mouse who's never had MECP2, who's very, very sick, get the protein levels back to normal, and the symptoms go away. What it didn't tell us is how we do that in people. You know, this was a proof of concept. It was a genetic trick that they can do in mice, but they can't do in people. So, okay, so how do we go about doing that in people now? So then in 2013, there was a paper that came out from Gail Mandel and Brian Kaspar and Adrian Bird as well, very reminiscent of the other video. The mouse on the left has no MECP2, the mouse on the right got gene therapy. Now, gene therapy is something that we can do in people, and this was the first clue that perhaps gene therapy was a way forward, okay? Okay, now the concept behind gene therapy is pretty simple. We know our gene, we know it's mutated, we deliver healthy copies of the gene to compensate for the mutated. Sounds very simple. It should be a one-time fix. You only do gene therapy once. And our expectation, given the animal data, is that it should be efficacious at least to some degree, regardless of age. Now, how gene therapy will look in a 1-year-old versus a 20-year-old, you know, may be a very different situation. But given the animal data, we would expect some improvement in the older kids as well. So after that experiment came out, after talking to lots of people in the scientific community, it became clear to me that we needed to put smart people together to work on this because it's a complicated problem. And so we had strong gene therapists like Steve Gray and Brian Kaspar who know a lot about gene therapy but don't know much about Rett syndrome. And then you had people like Stuart and Gail Mandel who know a lot about the animal model, but they're not gene therapists. And if we put these people together, they should bring all of the skills and experience to be able to to move this project forward. And that's, in fact, what happened. This group has generated a lot of data. A couple of papers have already been published. There's a couple more papers that are being written now. And what was announced in June was that this company, Avexis, that was started by Brian Kaspar, who's part of our consortium, he's the founder and chief scientific officer, have now licensed the gene therapy program and are now planning to take this forward to clinical trials. Now, this is a well-established company with funding, and it's exciting. It's now under their control, this program, and the dates that they have given us to share is that they hope to be in a clinical trial between 12 and 24 months. I'm hoping it'll happen sooner, but that's the dates that they have given us. The protocol, the clinical trial protocol, is now being written. Nothing is set in stone yet, so we don't know what the ages will be. I suspect the first trial will be quite small, 10 to 15 children, based on what's happened in other diseases. They will do one child first, wait 2 or 3 months, make sure that nothing bad happens, do the second child, wait a few months, do the third child, and then if everything looks good, they'll speed it up. Will it be risky? Yes. Never done gene therapy for Rett syndrome. It will be risky. But this is, as you all know better than anybody, this is a very serious disease. And I can tell you that, having Rett syndrome is risky. And as the girls get older and they potentially face a life without their parents, that's a huge risk as well. So I think this disease deserves bold steps. And we won't know how the trial will work or to what degree it will work. Now, there are potential challenges with gene therapy. We have to get the gene therapy into the brain. We have to deliver an optimal amount. And once it's in there, you can't turn it off. It's not like a pill where you have a side effect and you just stop taking the medication. Once the gene therapy is in there, there's no going back. So we recognize that there are challenges, and Avexis and the Gene Therapy Consortium has done everything that they can to mitigate the risks. Having said that, we don't want to put all of our eggs in the gene therapy basket. I think we have to diversify, right? And so we're going to do a couple of things. Number one is we're going to keep the Gene Therapy Consortium going. Stuart, Steve Gray, Gail Mandel, we've added a scientist from San Diego, Alison Watry. We're also looking to bring in another gene therapist as well. They're going to be working on second generation programs. The gene therapy field is moving very quickly, and there's progress and breakthroughs happening. So even when Avexis starts their trial, we know that there will already be better vectors and better ways to do gene therapy. So it's unlikely that the first trial is going to deliver a full, complete cure that we as parents want. And so I think it's going to be very important to have second and third generations in the pipeline ready to go that hopefully will do an even better job. We're not stopping at just traditional gene therapy, however. We're also working on other approaches. So one is RNA. So you know how you have a DNA that makes RNA and then gets turned into protein. You can attack at the DNA level. You can also attack at the RNA level. So we're looking at two different things, and Stuart Cobb is doing the RNA splicing. Gail Mandel is working on RNA editing. And I know I don't have a whole lot of time, so if you want more information, come and find me later. Just a couple of key points. These should also be one-time treatments. They will be delivered, the reagents that do this RNA editing and splicing will also be delivered via a vector, same way that a gene therapy is delivered. So whatever we learn with our gene therapy approaches are going to be applicable here as well. The third approach that targets MECP2 is protein replacement. And again, that's something that Stuart is working on as well. We're also collaborating with a company in California called Armagen. They've developed a way to fuse a protein to something else that gets recognized and shuttled into the brain. The challenge here will be, can we get enough MECP2 transported into the brain? The advantages are that you can titrate. You can give more, you can give less, and if there are bad side effects, you can also stop. So this is a work in progress. We're collaborating with Armagen and with the Adrian Byrd Lab. The fourth approach is MECP2 reactivation. So just very briefly, you know that MECP2 is on the X chromosome. Girls have 2 X chromosomes. So and they shut one down. Sometimes it's the chromosome with the mutated MECP2 that's shut down. Sometimes it's the other way around, and it's the chromosome with the healthy MECP2. So in a cell where the mutated MECP2 is on and making defective protein, there's a healthy copy of MECP2 that's on the inactive X chromosome. We want to try to turn it back on. So this has been ongoing for a while. We've been screening drugs. We're getting started now with a new approach, which uses something you may have heard of called CRISPRs, to deliver certain enzymes to the silent MECP2 that will do certain things to MECP2 to try to reactivate it. It's going to remove methyl groups, and it's going to add acetyl groups in an attempt to reactivate. So that's the reactivation. This summarizes the approaches. You'll see, gene therapy and MECP2 reactivation targeting the DNA level, RNA editing at the RNA level, and protein replacement at the protein level. By the way, you don't have to take pictures. Most of this is on our website. Okay, so that's cure, all right? We think that's where we're going to get the most improvement because we're targeting the root cause of the problem. Then there's what we call treat. So this is everything downstream from MECP2, not the root cause, but everything that may go wrong afterwards. And here we're going to be very selective in what we pick, because I think the risk here is spending many millions of dollars on things that may not, be as impactful as we would like as parents. So we'll pick things that we think may deliver something significant. One thing that we're interested in, for example, is ketamine. Okay. The third area is enable. And I'm going to explain this like this. Every conversation that I have ever had with a biotech company or a pharmaceutical company or an investor always 100% starts off the same way. It's never about the science. They always ask about clinical trials. So if my company had a drug that we wanted to test, how would that clinical trial look like? What are the symptoms that we would measure, and how do we go about measuring it? That's a big problem because we don't have very good assessment tools. And Alan Percy, who's sitting right here, can maybe talk more about that tomorrow when he gives a talk. Our assessment tools are not as objective as we would like them. They're not as sensitive as we would like them, and they're not as reproducible as we would like them. And that's a big problem. So we're working with Alan and 3 other researchers on a project, a $4.5 million project that has taken quite a while to get started, but is now ready to launch. And we're going to be developing what we hope will be objective, sensitive, reproducible outcome measures. We're also working on building a biobank. I know you heard about that earlier today. A biobank of iPS cells. So these are cells that you take from a skin sample, and you can turn them into brain cells. And then you can test drugs, you can test gene therapy, you can test protein replacement. So we're building that biobank as well. Okay, the fourth area is learn. And this is basic science. I mean, we've gotten to where we are now because over the years there's been investment in high quality basic science. I don't think now's the time to completely stop that. Until we know we have a cure, I think we have to keep some basic science going. Again, this is an area where we're going to be very selective. We're funding an MECP2 consortium, which is Adrian Byrd, Michael Greenberg, and Gail Mandel. We do accept proposals anytime. We have no deadlines, rolling admission through the years. Throughout the year, we're happy to look at proposals, but the bar to getting funded is pretty high. Historically, scientific breakthroughs are what drives progress, not small incremental changes, but major things that happen in the scientific community that moves you ahead in a very big way. And we're leveraging those new technologies, things like gene therapy, like RNA editing, like CRISPRs. And I think, that's what we need to do. We need to identify emerging cutting-edge technologies and leverage them for Rett syndrome. And that means working with people that are, doing this work, that are the best in their field. Now, this shows how the $33 million will be allocated. We've raised $8 million about of that $33 million, but we still have a lot that needs to be raised. And, I was listening to the questions about what can parents do, what can parents do. I mean, one of the things that has been frustrating for me over the last 17 years is that, the organizations are working somewhat in a vacuum. So, the Italian, the French, the Spanish, the German, they're all kind of figuring out where to put their money, and it's very difficult to know what to fund. It's difficult to raise the money. It is just as difficult, and I would actually say more difficult, to know and to have the experience and expertise to know where to spend that money. The risks are enormous. And the chance of wasting money, it's just astronomical, okay? So I think that clinics need to be delivered at the local level, national level. But research should not be done at the national level. Research should be done at a more global, strategic level. And this is something that needs work, because that's not happening right now, except for some exceptions. These are organizations that we work with. You're going to hear from my colleague, Rachel, who's going to talk about her experience in the UK. We partner with an Israeli organization and a German organization, and you see the ones up there. But we could be doing so much more if we pooled and leveraged our money together. So I think that's a good place for me to stop and to let Rachel take over, and I'm happy to answer questions later. I have to leave tomorrow morning, but I'll be here tonight, and my contact information is on the website. And come find me if you have questions.